Greetings, one and all, to the most cursed, most cringiest corner of the internet. A YouTube channel content creator actively alienating everyone in both the analog and digital world. Well, welcome, good evening, wonderful dice of all alignments. I am Lunar D8, and I'm gonna find it eventually. Here it is. The political test. This test will measure your political opinions according to a non-biased and agenda-free set of questions that has been used for universities and political parties all over the world. Okay, guys. We have more to read. This free political observance test will allow you to obtain scores of two major political scales found in the Western democracies. Though there are several other political coordinates and political observance tests in existence, these tests have commonly been criticized for seeking to trick a respondent answering in a certain way, for example, by applying spin to the question or framing them in such a way as to provoke emotional reactions in the respondent. By contrast, this test attempts to simply confront you with the questions without any coding or spin. 36 questions. Damn it. Question 1. Western civilization has benefited more from Christianity than from the ideas of ancient Greece. I'm Christian, I believe very strongly, but I do like, I like the history of ancient Greece. I like the mythology. I like, the Odyssey. Heck, I like the movie The Odyssey, of Odysseus. It came in 1995 with Armand Desante. It's like the second best movie ever made. Plus, Plato, Socrates, Aristotle, Diogenes. I'll go with slight agree, just because Christianity is really important, but I also really like, heck, a lot of ancient Greece really started a lot of things like math and the Hippocratic Oath, things about medicine. Granted, they weren't exactly as advanced as, say, modern medicine, but it was definitely, heck, there was even a lot of people working on. Now, granted, that's true of Christianity. There were a lot of Christian scientists who were actually, now, granted, they did run into a few issues with being accused of heresy sometimes, but then again, that's actually true of every religion. Just saying, Christianity is more important than ancient Greece, but at the same time, this is still an extremely important part of history. Heck, I'd also say, Christianity is up there, but I would say ancient Greece, Rome, ancient Israel, heck, Babylon, Persia, even, cultures that were a bit far removed from it, like, Japan, China. Heck, the Tao Te Ching is a very interesting book of philosophy. So it is Buddhism. I don't really regard stuff as religions, but, Taoism, Buddhism. Heck, I think there's 417 Delphic principles. It's a thing from ancient Greece. It's apparently 417 maxims that were given to, I think it's the priestess Delphine or something, by the god Apollo, which I don't know all 417 maxims. That's 417 things. But it's still, I think there's a lot to learn, even say if you were to read Hindu scriptures. Now again, I'm not very familiar with that stuff, but I like to read lots of things. Heck, I've never played the tabletop game Warhammer 40k, but I have a dozen of the books I like to just read. So, I like history. Even if it doesn't exactly always align with what I feel comfortable with or agree with. I just like history. I also like, planes and trains and spaceships and space shuttles and heck, we barely just made airplanes a little over 100 years ago. The Wright brothers in Ohio, just barely over 100 years ago. So, immigration to my country should be minimized and strictly controlled. Agree. Like, immigration is good, but you should know who's coming in. I mean, heck, just think of it like schools. There's, like, imagine like your kids went to a school. Would you want some random person just to walk into the school and the school to have no idea who that person is? What if they brought a gun in? I mean, isn't it up to the government of a country to look out for the best interests and the safety of its citizens? If a country were to allow, let alone encourage, mass migration of an undocumented nature into their own country, wouldn't that be the same as committing treason against their own citizens? Wouldn't that be endangering their own people? Doesn't a government have a responsibility to have the best interest of their citizens at heart, to want to try to keep their citizens safe, and also to make sure their citizens have access to, be able to work, to have food, housing? I mean, I'm not saying healthcare and stuff should just be free, but I'm saying you should have the access to where it's, affordable and available. Like, obviously, you can't just overly tax people either, because then it's just, you wind up taxing the people that work. But at the same time, you don't want things to be unbalanced where there's a group of people that just literally have all the money and the means of control. But I think that's kind of the issue of housing, is that it's not necessarily that... It's more so that there's a lot of companies that buy up a lot of properties and then charge more with it because they don't really have to worry about losing money. Whereas, hypothetically, via a system like capitalism, it's supposed to give people more control, more influence. People are supposed to be able to have private property, have more independence, be able to make more of their lives. I think it was like Henry Ford, who via capitalism was able to give people like a standardized work week, 40-hour weeks, overtime, better benefits, weekends. I mean, the idea is that hypothetically, capitalism gives people a better quality of living because employers have to compete with each other in order to give employees something incentive for them to work for them. But like I said, all things can go wrong, but I would still say capitalism is the best system we've ever come up with. But obviously, yes, there's people that, are corrupt. But that's with every system. I feel free market and capitalism is really the best option. We have kind of like the Constitution. The Constitution's not absolutely perfect, but it's honestly the best system of governance we've ever had. And I'm a very strong supporter of the Constitution and the Bill of Rights, especially free speech and the Second Amendment. People should have the opinion. People should have the, freedom to have an opinion, as long as you're not like advocating for violence or like committing libel or outright lying. But even then, you're allowed to have an opinion. But, and again, there's a difference between an average citizen as opposed to a large corporation that's being bankrolled by politicians. Because one, you have a position of authority, and two, you're actually being paid by. So at that point, it's the difference between a person having an opinion, even if it's a stupid opinion, it's still, you have a right to think and have an opinion, as opposed to actual propaganda being pushed and the censorship of free speech. Everyone's like, we're not even talking about that. I'm sorry, I got distracted. It's like, stop going on tangents, Lunar. I'm just saying this. Immigration is good. I think people should be able to go from country to country. And I think it's like, I certainly welcome anybody who wants to come to America, provided that they actually love America and want to integrate into the society. But even then, one, I would like to know if they have a criminal record, if they have any ill intentions. And even then, even if everyone were an angel, there is literally a limit to how many people the country can handle. I mean, hell, another reason why housing is so expensive is because there's more people. Another thing is that you have an issue where my phone That was an alarm set on my phone. I have other alarms. They'll probably go off at some point shortly, but I don't feel like turning those off yet. but, but yeah, it's just like heck. Imagine if you had a group of armed North Koreans coming in. I mean, do you just want soldiers from another country to just be able to come in without you knowing? I mean, it's the thing with the schools. Should anybody just be able to enter and leave a school building without anybody knowing? I mean, that wouldn't be very safe for the children. I mean, and here's the thing: even if every single person coming into a country would be completely nonviolent and a good person, even then, you want to have an understanding of who's coming in, how many people, so you understand what resources are moving. Especially since there's a lot of people that are coming in that actively are lying about asylum status, or they're actually working with terrorist organizations, or working with human traffickers, or drug cartels, or a number of other issues, or even being used as a means of subverting democracy in future years. Let alone the fact that if you have your native population having a very low birth rate and you're importing a massive number of other people, it's undermining your own citizens to the point that you're basically replacing them. I mean, it's not fair to the people that are illegally immigrating, nor is it fair to your citizens. It's not fair to anyone. And it really seems like something that only somebody who's corrupt and committing fraud and wanting to take advantage of people would want to do. And like I said, in general, is this. In regards to not only safety and resources and housing, as well as, how much of a different culture can be assimilated into another nation at a time, especially if there's a difference between people that are coming that love America and want to integrate, as opposed to people that have no intention of assimilating at all, are lying about things, and then also have every intention of just trying to undermine the country and are trying to. So, I mean, there's so many problems with that. But I think the biggest thing is this. A government's responsibility, any good government in terms of not only competency, but just morality, would be to look out for the well-being of your citizens first. Like, it should prioritize the, safety and prosperity of your own citizens. I feel that any government that wouldn't put their own citizens first in that regard, that's extremely immoral, and that's going to lead to a lot of people getting hurt. And that's even under the best of circumstances. But yes, I'm pro-immigration, but I think it should be done legally. I don't think it should be made too difficult for people to immigrate. And I think people should be able to enter and leave, and there should be, open trade and all that stuff. But there certainly should be some oversight. We should know who's entering the country. And if there's trade, we should know, okay, what's in the truck? Like, you can bring, okay, it's a bunch of milk. Cool. But at the same time, is it just a truck full of fentanyl? Like, is it like missiles being brought over from North Korea? Like, what's happening? I mean, does not anyone else remember 9/11 or care about that? I mean, because that technically border security does, count not only on the ground but also in the air, also airplanes, airports. I wonder how many trains actually cross the border, how that works. Because I know in Europe, I hear stories that there's a bunch of train systems that literally go from multiple countries to where you can go to sleep on a train and pass through a couple countries in your sleep. Maybe that's a bit of an exaggeration, but I would imagine anyone from Europe listening to this would probably be able to agree that there are, railways that run through multiple countries. But I'm just saying this. Immigration's good, but we should know who are coming in, and it has to have a certain number. Immigration is good. A country should have immigration. But again, a government's main priority should be the well-being and safety of its citizens. If a country is undermining the ability for its own citizens to be able to get housing or jobs, or even, feel secure, feel safe, or even a sense of belonging or community, especially like imagine if you had a Christian nation and you started importing a different religion to like overwhelm the Christian. Like all of a sudden you just import, I don't know, thousands and imagine if there's a small town of only 1,000 Christians and it's just 1,000 people, and then you just import like 10,000 like Zoroastrians or something. I mean, that's not very good for that society. And the question is what those people even want to integrate. And I'll say this, I'm pro-Christian, and I don't think people should be forced, but I'm also saying I don't want Christianity to be persecuted either. It's supposed to have freedom of religion. Government spending with the aim of creating jobs is generally a good idea. Yes, but also I kind of feel sometimes the government's inefficient about it. So the idea of spending the money to make jobs is good, but I feel like other people would do a better job of it than the government. But then again, other people could also be really fucking shitty about it too. I guess the statement here is I don't have much faith in humanity. Capital punishment should be an option in some cases. I'll say this. I think there should be capital punishment, but I think we, one, should avoid killing anyone unless we're absolutely certain that they're guilty of the crime. And two, only if it's very severe crimes. And three, we should not go to being a culture that's going to be like mutilating people. For example, we're not going to like start chopping off people's arms because they fucking stole something. We shouldn't be mutilating people or doing anything cruel or vicious or violent to them. And also any capital punishment should be done in a quick, as painless way as possible. Now, even if it's death by firing squad, people should at least have choices. If you don't want to be electric chair or euthanize with the, because I can understand people wouldn't want the like needle thing. I mean, so you should be able to choose like firing squad if you wanted. But the main point is this: we should be absolutely like there. At no point should we have a situation where an innocent person gets put to death. We shouldn't be like mutilating people in any way, or like, oh, you committed a crime, so now we're gonna like lobotomize you or pump you full of drugs. Both of which I consider worse than murder. Heck, I would consider the idea of amputating any part of a person's body, like their arms or legs or their tongue or something, I would consider that just as bad as killing them. But I would also say if like someone like, beats like a toddler to death, death penalty kind of warranted. If someone like Osama bin Laden, let's say if we caught Osama bin Laden and brought him to the United States for a trial, are we going to execute him afterward? But at the same time, I would also say this. We should be very certain that whoever does the stuff is guilty of it. We shouldn't be cruel about it. And it should only be for like the most heinous of crimes. We shouldn't be like, oh, you stepped on grass, death penalty. Prostitution should be legal. I mean, there should be at least some government oversight, but I would say this. I think prostitution should be legal, but I think there should be regular screenings of said prostitutes and the people that use them. Meaning, one, make sure that the people that have services of prostitutes are not being violent to the prostitutes. Second, make sure people that are prostitutes are actually being well treated, that people aren't beating them, they're not being forced into it, and that they actually have like health benefits. Like I think if a person were actually doing prostitution, they should be actually getting paid fairly. They shouldn't be getting like beaten. They should be treated with respect. You know, there shouldn't be people like forcing them into it or, doing things to them against their will. Like, well, oh, you agreed to do this thing, so now you have to do this other thing. The person's still a person. In addition to that, I would say that the prostitutes, as well as the people seeking to use prostitutes, should both be tested for, diseases and stuff beforehand. Main point is both the prostitutes and the people using the prostitutes should feel that they can engage in that stuff without fear of giving or receiving a sexually transmitted disease, or being involved in some sort of criminal activity, or being exposed to violence or abuse, or any sort of harassment, or libel or slander, or, I don't know, drugs. Like, they shouldn't have to be like, oh, you're in the prostitutes, so now you're around people that are like fucking crack or something, or meth. Like, just because you're a prostitute doesn't mean you should have to be around people on drugs or getting exposed to, diseases, or be around people that would be violent to you. Like, so simply put is this. Prostitution should be legal, but people on both sides should be guaranteed safety. Like, the prostitutes should know that they're not going to get beaten or be given an STD or be exposed to drugs or forced to do anything against their will. As well as there should be options for them to go to other career paths at any point. So if they choose they don't want to be a prostitute, that shouldn't be held against them. So that they're not like trapped in that profession for the rest of their lives. Homosexual couples should have the same rights as heterosexual ones, including the right to adopt. Yeah. Just same oversights. Like, there are some homosexual couples that shouldn't be able to adopt. But at the same time, there are some heterosexual couples that shouldn't be allowed to adopt. At the same time, any kid being raised by a couple, no matter what, should still be raised basically as if they're just straight and normal from the beginning. And everyone's like, oh, are you using normal derogatorily? No, I'm using normal as a way of describing the majority of a population. It is not any sort of moral condemnation. It's just a statement of, hey, most frogs are green. Is there something wrong with that frog being purple? No. In fact, it's cool that it's purple. But most frogs are green. It's just a way of having a realistic statement of reality. It'd be like, what color are clouds? White. Well, that cloud's slightly gray. Okay. But most of them aren't. It's just a statement of reality as I drink my ramen. It's blueberry flavored. But main point is this. Gay and straight couples should have the same rights. But there should still be oversight on both of them. In addition to that, I would say, even if a child is being raised in a gay family, they should still be raised as if they're straight. I would say no one should be making the decision that they're gay until they're like 15. There's nothing wrong with being gay. I'm just saying I don't want any sort of, I don't want stuff being pushed on kids. I don't want like fucking 7-year-olds saying they're gay or trans. There's nothing wrong with adults making those choices. Or at least people in late teenage years deciding that they feel a certain way about stuff. But I don't think this stuff should be exposed or pushed on children or, schools or even in church. Like, here's the thing. Church should accept, gay people to be there and not really have an issue with it. But there also shouldn't be pride flags in a church. I feel that's disrespectful to God. It's like saying this. It's not a sin for a woman to suck her husband's dick, but you wouldn't do that in the church pew. Same way, it's not a sin to wear a fucking Slipknot shirt and have like some fucking cool rock music. It's not a sin to listen to like fucking Tool and shit, but you wouldn't do that in the church. It's just disrespectful. It's kind of like saying there's nothing morally wrong with you like cracking open a beer or something. But you wouldn't crack open 10. And you wouldn't crack it open at a school. It's simply a point of having an understanding of where you're at. Like, there are certain actions that are not appropriate, say, at a funeral, or at a church, or a school, or a public park. And of course, different countries and states have their own views on this. Main point being is this. I just don't think anything should be getting pushed on kids. Now, I'll say this. If a person's 15 years old, they can have the right choice to decide if they're gay or not. If they're 16, it's their choice, they want to start having sex. If they're 17, it's their choice to identify as trans if they want. 19, start taking hormones. Of course, again, there can be exceptions to this. What if somebody has a medical condition and they need the doctor to give them a certain type of hormones when they're younger, or else their liver will explode or something? But the main point is this. I just think there should be the same oversight on both groups of people, that everyone should be treated equally, and that kids should just be kids. There's nothing wrong with being gay, but you shouldn't have kids thinking or feeling they're gay, even if they're going to be gay when they're older. The main point is this. Kids are kids. Let them have normal childhoods. They shouldn't even know about that stuff. I would say anyone that's 12 years or younger shouldn't even know what sex is. But yeah, there's nothing wrong with people that are older being gay, but you shouldn't be talking about this stuff to kids in elementary school, especially if you're a teacher. You're in a position of authority over these kids. It's an abuse of that power and of the structure, and a betrayal of the parents' trust to be pushing stuff on their little kids when they're trusting you with their children, the most precious people in their entire, the most precious part of their lives, their whole fucking world. They're trusting that with you, and you're abusing your authority as a teacher. You're there to teach them math and science and how weather works, not stuff about political ideologies or sexuality or your own personal life. The students are not there to learn about your personal life as a teacher. They don't really need to know much about you. They need to know what's in the textbook, and they need to learn history through a non-filtered glass. They need to just know the way things were, and it is very good for people to respect and love America. America is one of the greatest societies that has ever existed, and many, many amazing things has come of it. I love America, and I am proud of it. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America, and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. I'm answering these questions more thoroughly than they wanted to be answered. Heck, makes me wonder if they'll make a more thorough test at some point. Heck, Fleekazoid was making a review of the Doom Dark Ages, and as much as he was bitching about the parrying system, it makes me wonder. I wonder when we get the new Doom game, which will be probably a futuristic type thing, I wonder if they'll be the people who make that new Doom game, will it be actually familiar with Fleekazoid's, criticisms of Dark Ages, and will try to make a game that is more brutal and savage than Doom Eternal, but is more of a run and gun like 2016. So I want a game that's more brutal, more aggressive, more testosterone than Doom Eternal, but is more of a run and gun like 2016, but faster. And heck, I like Fear. First Encounter Assault Recon. It's an Xbox game. Had a really good shotgun. Also, the nail gun was good. The market is generally better at allocating resources than the government. Yes, there should be some government involvement, but it should be minimal. That's my phone again. Hold on, buddy. My legs hurt. My nose is stuffy. I don't know why my nose is stuffy, but let me check my alarms. There. Turn it off, future alarms. Blow my nose real quick. Oh. Okay, I'm back. Turn off the rest of those alarms, and I blew my nose. I'm gonna take a drink of my ramen. Tomorrow's Memorial Day. Let's see. If people want to drive without a seatbelt, that should be their decision. Disagree. Like, I don't think it'd be super strict or really like super penalized, but I think in general there should be some safety regulations, but they shouldn't be too. Like, I want people to have freedom of choice, but I also don't want people like driving down the road not, like, oh, this person doesn't have taillights now. I guess that they're going to cause a pileup, and 20 people that were unrelated to this person are now dead because of their choice. Like, it's kind of like saying freedom of speech is good, but you can't yell like fire in a movie theater because then people are going to panic, and then someone could get trampled and hurt, which means literally because of what you said, people die. Or like, here's the thing. Yes, you have freedom of speech, but you can't incite violence, you can't threaten to kill people, and you can't like purposely like lie if you are a publication or a government organization. That's a misuse and abuse of your power. There's a difference between a public news place as well as a government organization or even people with tons of money as opposed to just some random dude. Beyond that is this. There's also whether or not something's in good faith, whether the person is trying to be fair, or more importantly is this, outright slander and libel. Like, if you were like suddenly started saying that Biden was like fricasseeing babies on the White House lawn. I mean, he obviously wasn't, but that's just an outright lie. And especially if you're outright, saying that or putting it in this print. That wouldn't exactly be very moral. So I mean, I would say any like news organization like Fox News or CNN, they have a responsibility to tell the truth. And if they are purposely lying, well, that's wrong. Import tariffs on foreign products are a good way to protect jobs in my country. Strongly agree. Now again, it is good to have foreign trade. But one, by having tariffs, it can generate revenue for your country. Two, it also incentivizes, businesses to be made in your country so that you're able to actually produce more things yourself. The idea being is you create more jobs, you have a more economy, more stable, as well as your own citizens are more, reliant on themselves. It's like this. Imagine if a country was getting electricity or resources it needs for electricity, like coal or lithium or oil from another country. Well, at that point, that allows that country to have leverage over you. Which, obviously, yes, there's going to be some examples of that through history. That's just part of world trade. But you don't want to make your country completely dependent upon another nation. I mean, it makes it easy for you to run into a very dangerous situation later. Either one, the person you're depending on becomes unable to give you anything, or they use it against you coercively. I mean, either way, you're setting up your own country for failure. Now, I'll say this. Say there was a foreign country that was producing something necessary to make solar panels, and they were the only country available to get it from. Yes, you should purchase that stuff from them. But you should also try to figure out your own way to make it yourself, as well as a way to be independent. So, it's important to have free trade, even on a global scale. But countries should be able to have, to be able to be independent. Like, you should be encouraging your citizens to produce and consume stuff from their own country first. Like, yes, it's good that they're still buying stuff like, let's say, butter or milk. Yes, it's a good thing for, say, American citizens to buy butter or milk from another country, but wouldn't it be better if the butter or milk was made in the country? That's the money staying in the country. But I'm just saying this. This is very useful. Obviously, other countries are already using it too, and again, it can also be used in order to balance things out. Not only does it encourage businesses to actually have business and factories in your country, and it gives your country not only another source of revenue, but also more independence, so you're not dependent on another country for especially as an essential good or product. But also, a lot of times it can be used as a negotiation tool in order to, negotiate for whatever, but I would assume, or I would at least hope, that anybody using it as a negotiation tool would be doing so in a way meant to be fair. There is at heart a conflict between the interest of business and the interest of society. Well, some businesses care entirely about profit. On the one hand, that could motivate them to be more efficient, but at the same time, if they can undercut citizens, they'll do that. For example, Henry Ford was able to give better, quality of life to some of his workers. But at the same time, many factory workers, companies and CEOs, if they could get by paying their employees less, would do so. And a lot of times, if a company makes more money in profits, rather than using it as more money to invest in their own company, or even giving their employees raises, they'll just use it as kickbacks for themselves, or use it for something illegal, but namely just to line their own pockets. But I would say, I'd say I'm neutral on this. I really don't know how to best answer this. So I'll say neutral because while I'm not an expert in any sort of political opinion, and this is literally just my opinions, I'm not a politician, I'm not making policy. But the answer is, I don't know what to do in this situation. A country should never go to war without the support of the international community. Disagree. Obviously, you should at least talk to other countries. But in general, I'm kind of anti-war. I would prefer all countries not have war. But I understand there's situations where it's necessary. But if America needed to go to war to another country, which I would hope it doesn't, but if it were the case, I don't want to have to get the fucking UN's approval. I don't want to be we have to make sure it's okay with France. But at the same time, I'd be open to talking to France first. Here's the thing. Say if we were to go to war. I have to take a sip of my Romney. Firstly, I have to say this. I'm against any sort of draft. I feel that in any war situation, any and all soldiers, one, should have complete voluntary service. And they have the choice. And I would say in terms of, policies of what we do in a war, whether we continue fighting that war or what we do, I would say if there's any sort of vote on that, I would say soldiers should have an extra vote because they're the ones out there fighting it. I mean, after all, shouldn't they get some sort of extra incentive if they're the ones putting their lives on the line? I mean, you shouldn't have just a bunch of old politicians or people that are never going to see combat being the ones deciding what happens. That's not fair to the people that actually have to go out there, even if it's voluntary on their part. And again, like I said, there should be no draft. No one should be forced against their will. But I will say this. I do think that if America were to go to war with anyone, we should talk to the international community first. Like, I would think, like, if we were to go to war, and like, let's say if Trump suddenly decided they were going to go to war with China or something, I would think that if France wanted to talk Trump out of it, that Trump should definitely talk to France first. And of course, it won't just be Trump and Macron. It'd be, legislative groups in both countries as well. All of Congress would be involved. Technically, you have to have Congress's approval. But main point being is this. If America were to go to war, that is America's choice. However, I do think America should discuss it with other groups, like the other nations. Like if there is literally, especially nations that would be involved in the conflict, especially anyone who would be our allies, we should discuss it with them. Obviously, violence should not be the first choice, but sometimes it is a necessary choice. I'm just saying I don't want our country hamstrung. I don't want our country not being allowed to make a choice because we had to have approval of some other, council. Like we have to have the UN vote on it or something. Or you have to have NATO vote on it. At the same time, there should be discussions about it. Like, in the same regard, let's say if Australia decided to go to war with Japan. Obviously, Australia doesn't need America's permission to go to war with Japan. But if America were wanting to try to talk Australia out of it, Australia should at least listen to us and have us over for tea and crumpets and have a discussion first. Now, at the end of the day, it's still Australia's choice. But I think they should at least talk to us. Like, they don't need America's permission, but America, as Australia's very concerned friend, we'd like to at least express our concern and talk to you first before you wage war on Japan. I'm just saying this. A country should discuss things in the international community, but it shouldn't, relinquish its sovereignty or its own choice. It makes its own decisions. But it can still, it's kind of saying, you can listen to other people's opinions. Just because you don't agree with them or do what they say doesn't mean you weren't listening to them. But you should still hear, every point of view. And think very clearly, especially about something this serious. People who turn down a job should not be eligible for unemployment benefits from the government. Well, let's say this. Definitely if there's a situation where a person can't work, whether it's a situation in society, like a global pandemic, or, nuclear war, that's another issue. I don't think unemployment would exist at that point for anyone. I think most governments would just collapse. There definitely has to be a line to this, but I would say in general, that if somebody's going to want to get employment, they should at least be trying to the best of their ability. Now, if they're not able to work, that's not their fault. And if there's just no jobs available, or say if there might be some jobs, but they literally would not be of benefit to them, and would have some extenuating circumstance that would cause additional problems, like just because there's a job available, but it would actually be seriously dangerous to your well-being in your life, you shouldn't be forced to take that job if it's a good possibility you're going to die doing it. But at the same time, and I would say if there's a situation where there's no job available, that's a greater issue of society as a whole. If society is failing to provide jobs for willing and capable workers who are trying to work, then either there's something really wrong with society, or the jobs are in a situation where wages have stagnated and conditions have become deplorable to the point that it's literally not of enough benefit for the employees to work for this job because it's too much of a damage to the person for not enough pay. But I would say in general, it would be good for people to at least be trying to work. Now, I'll say this, if they're not capable of working, or if there literally are no jobs and they keep getting turned down for everything and they're not able to get a job, well, that's not their fault. But there shouldn't be people that are completely physically capable, who have nothing wrong with them, who literally aren't even trying to work, literally receiving more money and benefits than people that actually work full-time jobs. That's not fair to everyone else or to society. Plus, that would cause further wage stagnation in of itself. Now, of course, there's bigger issues of corruption when it comes to CEOs and big business. That's an issue there. But I'm saying that as long as the person's not like crippled or no jobs available, they're at least trying. They should still get some, but there should at least be an attempt. The person should be trying, at least to the best of their ability. Some peoples and religions are generally more trouble than others. Well, peoples. Well, the KKK is a really bad group of people. They're definitely more trouble. And religions, well, I would say anything that would promote violence. So I would say if there's a religion that's just doesn't, integrate into the society that they're going into, or is actively calling for violence, but at that point, it's not an issue of freedom of speech or religion. It's that if there's actually a provision in your religion calling for harming people or for usurping the government, well, that's violating other laws. That's actual, treason against the country. You're planning to overthrow the country, or, your violence against people. You're like, freedom of religion is important, but not at the point that it's causing, death and danger and insecurity to other people. Like, your freedoms usually end where your fist connects with somebody else's face. So, again, there are some people that are inherently bad, like members of the KKK, or actual Nazis, whereas nowadays usually people just tend to call everybody they disagree with a Nazi. Or like, oh no, it's, you drank Pepsi, you're a Nazi. I'm like, I like Pepsi though. It's just, because here's the thing, using the word Nazi so frivolously, it really undercuts all the people that were genocided back in the 40s. Millions of people died, let alone just in the fucking war. The Nazis were about absolute totalitarian control, complete suppression of freedom of speech, complete removal of, people's rights to defend themselves, freedom of religion. The Nazis were really big on gun control, and they really hated freedom of speech. They really pushed a lot of propaganda. They were really big into eugenics. And also we're really big into socialism too. Because technically a National Socialist Workers' Party, technically Nazis. I would say they weren't communists, but then again, neither was Russia. Because technically, communism would be the idea of having a socialism that doesn't need a government in order to enforce it. Like the ideal utopia version of it. Whereas socialism is just a temporary form where the government's taking care of stuff till you get to that stage. But the problem is, you're never going to get to that stage. People are inherently corrupt. And usually the people that are the most corrupt are the ones who are going to seek power. Heck, that's the whole point of the Constitution. Like, the Constitution is not meant to govern a nation that's governed by angels. The idea is that the Constitution, the Bill of Rights are set up in a way so that even if we have a bunch of people in the government who want to abuse the power and be tyrants or betray the people or do whatever, the idea is the Constitution and the Bill of Rights are supposed to keep that in check so that even if you were to have bad people in charge, it limits their ability to abuse that power. And it lays down certain rules of like there's limits of like there's certain lines that should never be crossed. I mean, this whole point of Bill of Rights is to ensure that safety for the citizens. The idea, I mean, heck, the whole point of like, Second Amendment is so that the government doesn't, because usually anytime the government takes away the rights of the citizens to have guns, it's so that they can fucking kill you all. I mean, heck, it's usually like, hey, what's going to happen? All right, the government wants to take away your gun because they're about to do something you'd shoot them for. Like, here's the thing. Would the Holocaust have ever happened if every Jew in Germany had an AK-47? I think not. But, yeah, there are some peoples that are inherently a problem, like the KKK. The KKK is a very, very bad group of people, or actual literal Nazis pushing for eugenics and suppression of freedom of speech, and to have severe gun control and propaganda, and are trying to undermine any sort of Christianity or traditional values like the Nazis were back in the 40s. They were really against the nuclear family, and they were really trying to push families against each other and divisiveness and racism. And they were really big into socialism. So they're also very much the state had absolute power. And they didn't exactly have any qualms about using violence against people just for any sort of disagreement. They weren't open to debate and discussions. And they were needlessly cruel. Heck, Dr. Joseph Mengele of the Nazis, that's pretty fucking horrible. I mean, what kind of monster does mutilations to people, especially against their will? That's horrible. I'm just saying this. Actual Nazis or the KKK, very bad. Religions, again, it's fine for people to believe whatever they want to believe. Freedom of religion is important. But you can't have people that are inherently saying that part of the religion is they're going to overthrow the government. Or that part of the religion is that they're going to kill people that they disagree with. If all of a sudden a religion came up and it said that, you weren't okay with fried chicken anymore, so you were going to kill everyone at KFC. That's not okay. That's literally calling for violence. So obviously, now I don't think there's any religion that hates KFC. I mean, I think Colonel Sanders was a pretty likable dude. But I'm just saying, freedom of religion is very important. And I think people should have the right to believe whatever religion they want. In whatever they want. I mean, heck, just Christianity alone. Let's take that. I wouldn't want Christian religious rules to be in place. I'm Christian, but I don't exactly agree with most preachers and pastors myself. At the same time, even though I'm Christian, I don't want Christian laws from the Bible, whether it be Old Testament or New Testament, to be enforced in society. I don't want our laws based off the Bible. Now, I want people to be able to read the Bible if they want and to believe whatever they want about it, or to believe whatever religion they want. But I don't want Christianity or any other religion forcing their religious beliefs into the public law. I'm Christian, and I don't even want Christian religious rules as part of public law, let alone any religion. Plus, I don't want anyone calling for violence or usurping the government. I don't care what religion it is. Generally put, if the religion is calling for, destroying the American government or undermining the Constitution or free elections, or is calling for abusing people or violence, well, that's bad. It's bad to kill people, especially innocent people. So obviously, if your religion, so it's not an issue of freedom of religion. Like, I think everyone should have freedom of religion to believe in whatever they want. But if your religion is actively calling for hurting innocent people or inciting violence, well, at the very least, you should be very, very straightforward that even if you are a believer of whatever religion that would be of that kind, that you don't subscribe to that and that you condemn that. You should, if there's a group of people that you identify with and they're somehow doing something horrible, you should at least be clear that you don't condone, that you are actively condemning them doing a bad thing. So again, yeah, if your religion's calling for violence or doing something horrible, well, it's bad not because it's a different religion. It's bad because you're calling for something horrible. I mean, heck, even in Christianity, there's definitely various sects that were extremists in the past that would have called for, killing people or strict rules about certain things that I would be very much against. So, I think any rules we have in society should be based off of common sense, compassion, kindness, logic, and while people should certainly take their religious beliefs to heart and they should mean a lot to them, I don't think any religion in the world should be influencing common law. But obviously some groups are worse than others. The Church of Satan, that'd be bad. Or imagine if there were people that are worshipping Baal from the ancient Bible, or Moloch or something. Or, well, not like Shiva, but would that count? Would that be an issue? I'm making an anime reference at this point, which everyone's like, that's very unprofessional to do during this. And I'm like, what part of this was professional? I'm some guy drinking a blueberry ramune with a picture of a Godzilla on it. I'm going to look at hentai and jerk off after, doing this. Okay. Next. It's going to be futa, by the way. So, haha. It almost never ends well when the government gets involved in business. Sometimes the government does make things more corrupt. They can be oversight, but sometimes the government itself needs oversight. But then if you have endless layers of bureaucracy, sometimes nothing ever fucking gets done. So there's goods and bads with it, and I honestly don't know what to do about this situation. So I'll just stay neutral. Free trade is better for third world countries than development aid. What? Hi. So, if you give developmental aid to a country, does that undermine their ability for free trade? I would say that as long as you're not trying to undermine free trade, it should be okay. I would say that if a country in a development or in the first world were to give developmental aid money or resources to the third world, it should be with the interest of helping them to establish a better economy on their own part so that they will grow as a country. You don't want them to be dependent on the other country or to stagnate their own economy. So I think it's okay for a first world country to give money and aid to a third world country, provided it's in the interest of helping the third world country better itself into becoming a first world country itself. Also, the money given by the first world country should definitely be going to the third world country, should be used in responsible ways, should go through regular audits, and should also not being used for anything corrupt, shouldn't be getting embezzled or siphoned off somewhere else. And it shouldn't be used, it should be audited, and you should be aware of what the money is being used on and where it's going. Also, there should be limits to how much money you give to the other country. Because at the end of the day, that money is coming from the citizens of the first world country. So while it is good to want to help the other country, you shouldn't put an additional burden on your own citizens. That's not fair to them. I would say in any such situation with that stuff, I think the citizens themselves should have the choice. Because at the end of the day, it's the citizens footing that bill. So I think that the people paying for something should have the right to decide who's... Because essentially the citizens in the first world country are paying the bills of the people in the third world country. So I would say the citizens of the first world country should have a choice in how their taxes are being spent. You know, people should have a say in, one, how much they are taxed, and two, what the money they're being taxed is being used for. There are too many wasteful government programs. Agree. Speculation on stock exchange is less desirable than other kinds of economic activity. I mean, obviously sometimes people give into panic and stuff, and it can be manipulated. But I would say this is asking, do I think free market is better than a controlled market? Speculation is less desirable. I would say disagree. Speculation is good, but it shouldn't be taken to an extreme. There should be some regulations on it. But in general, I would say our current system stock market is perhaps the best thing we've had so far. We need to increase taxes on industry out of concern for the climate. Strongly disagree. How does taxing, the economy more fix the environment? And even then, all it does is it puts more restrictions on us where other countries are just going to go hog wild with it, at which point that just creates a huge imbalance. Now, yes, there should be certain restrictions to say that, hey, you shouldn't pump this many chemicals. But at the same time, also, there should be some restrictions, because if you completely crush factories, then people don't have jobs, and now they don't have money. And also, if you don't have, if you limit farmers and start putting limitations on, their chickens, or how much milk they can sell, or how much methane their cows can release, then you're going to undermine, how much farmers can produce, at which point you're going to lower the amount of food available, which means you're going to cause starvation and economic problems. So people are going to have poverty and starvation, possibly additional disease. So at the end of the day is this. I think it is important for us to take care of our environment, but not at the cost of causing famine, starvation, poverty, and even then, you're not going to tax people. Because then eventually you can just turn around, you can tax people additional money for oil, and then you can take off that regulation, and then when suddenly people are making more money and not having to pay as much on that taxes, well, oh, my ear itches. Then at that point, you can claim, oh, see how much money we're saving you? But really, it's not that the government did a good thing there. It's that the government undid a bad thing that they did earlier that they should have never done in the first place. So yes, we should care about the environment, but taxing the economy or causing poverty or famine isn't going to fix the environment. So there are ways to do it, and again, while taking care of the planet's important, it shouldn't come at the cost of destroying jobs or making where we have less food available for people. At the end of the day, yes, the Earth's important, but the humans living on it actually matter more. I mean, imagine the Earth's a giant fish tank. Yes, if the fish tank becomes super clouded up and becomes gross, all the fish will die. But at the same time, you can't say, oh, the fish poop in the water, so if we just kill all the fish, it'll make the planet better. I mean, yes, the fish tank's clean then, but now there's nothing living in it. And the purpose of the fish tank was a place to be a home for the fish. It's kind of like I'm saying the purpose of the Earth is to be a home for humans. If humanity's not here, then Everyone's like, oh, that's self-centered. Well, forgive me for considering that I feel that my species matters, that I think humanity is important and should endure, that I think anything that would lead to the extinction of humanity is bad. And then people say, well, we need to fix stuff for the climate to prevent the extinction of humanity. Yes, but I'm also not wanting to do things that are going to cause harm to people over it, too. Yes, there should be oversights, but there should be limits to it. And even then, there are some governments that would use this as an excuse to create totalitarian control or absolute taxes to crush any sort of dissent. So there's ways in which this could be abused very badly. Medically assisted suicide should be legal. For the most part, I disagree. I'm not going to say an extreme disagree because there are some situations. Like if you're an 80-year-old person dying of terminal cancer and you're in horrible pain, I understand. You're in terrible pain. You don't want to live anymore. Or if you're a person and you're your body was cut in half and you're just like a head and a set of lungs, and you're somehow alive thanks to the miracle nightmare of science, like fucking RoboCop or something. On the one hand, it's a miracle that you're alive, but at the same time, it's a life of such suffering that I wouldn't want you to suffer. But at the same time, I don't want people like, oh, are you sad? Well, kill yourself. To fucking hell. We shouldn't have fucking Futurama fucking suicide pods. Fucking Futurama Fry. Just saying. It should only be in extreme situations. If a person's in terrible, terrible pain. And even then, it should be a discussion. I understand there would be some exceptions. Say a building collapses on somebody and they're in terrible, horrible pain. There's no morphine available. There's no chance of saving their life. They're going to die in a few hours anyway. And they're asking you to take a gun and blow their brains out. Well, you're technically killing them. Or at that point, what they just ask you, they have the one free arm and they ask you to just give them the gun and they'll shoot themselves. Technically it requires your assistance for them to be able to kill themselves. But at the same time, it's, they're already going to die and they're in horrible pain and there's no way you can stop the pain. But at the same time, example, you shouldn't have there was a 6-year-old who said they were sad and they didn't want to go on living. So obviously there has to be certain extremes and exceptions to where there's certain situations where it wouldn't be acceptable. It can't be oh, this person's sad or this person's a certain age. I'll say this. Say tattoos. A person shouldn't be allowed to get a tattoo until they're 18 years old. I don't see anything inherently wrong with a tattoo, but I would say anyone giving tattoos to people should be, a professional on it. You shouldn't have someone giving a tattoo to somebody who doesn't know what they're doing or is using unsterile things and just is spreading, you have a tattoo and you get HIV on a needle, you're just using the same dirty needle on everybody. And yes, I don't really know much about tattoos. I don't like this stuff. I don't see anything wrong with other people getting tattoos, but I do think that if other people are getting tattoos, that, the needle should be sterile. The person doing it should be certified to know what they're doing. And I think the person getting the tattoo, one, not only should be 18 before getting the tattoo, but I think people shouldn't be allowed to get tattoos while they're drunk or, inebriated or in any sort of noticeably mentally deranged state. If it's noticeable the person smoked a bag of weed or something or is high on something, they shouldn't be allowed to make that choice to get a tattoo. I will say this, though. There also shouldn't be the inverse. There should never be a situation where somebody's forced to get a tattoo against their will. Example, if you're a little kid, not only should you not be able to get a tattoo against your parents' will, but there shouldn't be a situation say if you're a 13-year-old kid and your parents want to give you a tattoo, but you don't want it. Your parents shouldn't be allowed to force you to get a tattoo if you don't want it. Heck, one could even say if the parents were influencing their 13-year-old. So say if a person's a 13-year-old and they want to get a tattoo and their parents want them to get the tattoo, I still think they shouldn't be able to get the tattoo. Because at that point, I am calling into question the, mental retardation of their parents. Because obviously, it'd be like this. What about this situation? What if there was a 13-year-old that wants to kill themselves? And the parents are like, yeah, we agreed. We want that 13-year-old to kill themselves. You're like, well, that'd be a terrible parent. No parent would be like that. Most parents know. But there would be some people that are very terrible people. So why would you say in that one situation it should be allowed? So I'll say this. Like, say if there was a 13-year-old and their parents want to give them a tattoo and the 13-year-old wants to get the tattoo, I still don't think the 13-year-old should get a tattoo. Because I think of that same 13-year-old, even if they think very strongly they want to get a tattoo, and their parents are very adamantly, and they're like, Jesus told us that that child needs that tattoo. Well, it could be that when that child gets older, they'll have made the decision that they wish they had never gotten the tattoo, or they're like, oh, wow, that was dumb. Or it's just like, oh, I was just a kid. I didn't know any better. I was just easily influenced. Main point is this. I don't think people should commit suicide, but I do understand there are certain extremes, and there are some situations where somebody would need to do so that would require the assistance of somebody else. I think that there should be some exceptions, but I think they should be considered very, very rare. But I would imagine just common sense and compassion should be the guide on that. I mean, with a lot of rules, you can't be absolute. But in general, I would say suicide is bad, and assisted suicide is generally bad. But there are exceptions to where it should be allowed. Taxpayer money should not be spent on art and sports. Agree. Like, I'll say this. Again, if it's what taxpayers want to spend the money on, and we're doing okay financially, but it's just, at that point, if we're going to spend money on sports or arts, I mean, at that point, I don't know, couldn't people just not be taxed and then just donate it on their own? I don't like forcing people to pay more money in taxes, especially for stuff that isn't considered the highest priorities. Because at the end of the day, if this stuff's still important, well, then the people that were getting taxed can freely donate it. I'd rather citizens have the choice. Overall, security leaks like those perpetrated by Edward Snowden and WikiLeaks do more harm than good. I mean, there are certain circumstances, but I would say in general, as long as the whistleblowers are being honest and are not being paid off by some, antagonistic government force from within or from another nation. Like, imagine if, Richard Nixon's political opponents paid off a fake whistleblower or something. So I'd say, as long as they're being honest and in good faith, I think whistleblowers are good. But in general, I think we should have good security when it comes to intelligence. Equality is more important than economic growth. It depends on what you mean by equality. I mean, I think I'm egalitarian. I think everyone should be treated equally, and everyone should have equal opportunities. But at the same time, I don't believe in equity. Like, I don't think you should, take more from people that were able to do a better job to give to people that did worse in order to try to force them to an equal outcome. It's about equal opportunity, not equal outcomes. And a lot of times, by allowing greater economic growth, you create a better standard of life for everyone. So I'm kind of neutral on this, because on the one hand, I think everyone should be treated equally, but I think some people would misconstrue this to like try to tear other people down to try to give it to people that have less in circumstances where you're taking from somebody that's working and giving to someone who doesn't work. Which again, I understand there should be some amount of aid or welfare, but I don't think it should be taken to an extreme. And I'd say in general, any society that has a huge amount of economic growth, regardless of where you are in the equality totem pole, everybody has their station in life improved by the economy growing. So by having greater economic growth. So if you were to prioritize better economic growth over everything else, in the end, it actually makes everybody's quality of life better. But if you force equity, then you stagnate economic growth, especially if you're doing it at the cost of economic growth, and then everybody suffers. Which means technically even in a situation where you ignored equality completely and just focused on economic growth, in that situation, even the people on the lowest end of the totem pole over here, if there was a hierarchical system, they would actually have a better quality of life than if you focused on pure equality. But, again, this is a very complicated thing that I really don't know what I'm talking about. But I'd say the most important thing should be just focus on economic growth. I mean, if you're making a better economy, then there's more money and food and housing for everybody. At which point that means everyone's happy. Everyone has food. Everyone has money. Everyone has jobs. Everyone has opportunities. Isn't that good? It is legitimate for nations to privilege their own religion over others. Agree. What kind of society doesn't prioritize their own society? It'd be suicidal not to. Rehabilitating criminals is more important than punishing them. Agree. I mean, yes, it has to be some sort of punishment. You're not supposed to reward people, but the punishment shouldn't be harsh. And the idea is, I mean, there are some people that become institutionalized where, and a lot of times if you're arresting people, you're taking people that committed a lesser crime offense. And I know there's different divisions within a prison, but in general, there are some people that get arrested for a small offense and get thrown in prison and get exposed to more dangerous criminals. And it also makes it harder for them to get future jobs. So again, there should be limits, and of course, if people do bad things, there should be a punishment. But then there should be limits of what are they being punished for, and I would think some criminals shouldn't be housed with other criminals. Period. I think there should be more division of it. Heck, there's that thing where the showers are all giant, big, and communal. I honestly think everyone should be able to have their own individualized showers. Like, it shouldn't be cruel and unusual punishment, and you shouldn't be having, prisons shouldn't have as much violence as they do. It's pretty well known that most prisons tend to have a lot of violence and even criminal activities and even drugs going on in them. They shouldn't be having those things. How is a person supposed to become rehabilitated if they're constantly exposed to nonstop violence? I mean, at that point, the only thing it teaches them is just don't go back to prison, or to just be better at committing the crime, or to become more aggressive and violent so that they can get along with the people who have the most power. So at that point, the only thing you're teaching them is to be a better, more efficient, more violent, more ruthless criminal. I mean, yes, you do need to punish people, but it should only be for something they deserve to be punished for in a fair, reasonable amount. And the ultimate goal should be to be able to return them to society as somebody that's a functioning member of society. Also, you should never have somebody that is a functioning member of society who really didn't do anything wrong being thrown in prison over some arbitrary reason. That's like defeating the whole purpose of everything. But I would say, yes, they still need punished, but it's important to try to rehabilitate people. The government should set a cap on wages of bankers and CEOs. I mean, if it's a percentage cap, I would say yes to a degree. The problem is, what's the cap? I would slightly agree. I don't want to punish CEOs for being successful with their businesses, because I feel that undermines the incentive for people to make successful businesses, which again, by making successful businesses, you make society better and everyone benefits. But I also think there should be situations where a CEO if their business is doing so extraordinarily well, there should be at least some restriction forcing them to funnel that money back in to either grow their business more or to give it to the workers and to raise the wages of their employees. But I think there should be some balance so that it's kept fair, because you don't want to de-incentivize people from being, leaders, because they want to do this. Like, after all, a person's a CEO, they're putting in a lot of hard work and they're being very productive, they're being very creative, and they're taking a lot of responsibility. So they do deserve to get a higher chunk. But I would say that if their business is doing really, really successful, well, then they should be able to funnel some of that money back into the wages of their employees. So I'm just saying, I want to make it fair to everyone, and I want it to be fair to the employees of the factory. So if there's a factory employees, I think they should be able to get, an increase, more money being funneled into their pay. My country should give more foreign aid and development aid to third world countries. Disagree. Like, I support us giving developmental aid and foreign aid to other countries, but I don't think anyone should be able to embezzle it. I think there should be limits to how much we give, and it should definitely be audited in terms of how much is being given to who, where is it going, what exactly is it being used for, and are we even getting the results out of it? Like, if it's supposed to be like creating farms to feed people, well, are people now having good food to eat, or are they starving? Are we getting? It's like any business you have. If you put money into an investment, you want to make sure that money's actually getting spent on the investment you wanted, and you want to make sure that investment's paying off. The idea is this: if we give money to a foreign nation, we want to make sure it's actually going to them, and it's actually being used for what we want it to be used for, and that it's actually succeeding in the use. And even then, we don't want to give everything. You want to have... It's kind of like, okay, yeah, you can be a Christian, you believe in God, but if you give so much money to where you're giving all your extra money to the church and you're neglecting your family, well, then that's not very good. Same way if you're a country and you're giving all your money to another country, but you have citizens that are homeless and veterans who are starving on the street and not getting proper care. It's like, yes, it may be noble to want to help people in another country, but if those people are then using that aid to turn around and try to attack us, well, that's bad. And also, if that money could have been used to save homeless veterans and give them proper medical care in homes, I'd rather take care of our own citizens. Yes, it'd be good to help other people, but if you have limited resources, I'd rather take care of our own people. Surveillance counter programs have gone too far. Disagree. Some countries and civilizations are natural enemies. Agree. I mean, in general, I want everyone to get along, but I mean, there are some countries that just, not only are they actively in war, but also maybe their culture are just naturally just not cohesive. So it's not exactly very fair to anyone involved to ignore reality and force them to try to be together when all that does is just hurt people, and that's not good to hurt people. The government should redistribute wealth from the rich to poor. On the one hand, I would say a moderate agree, but again, it should be with limitation. Obviously, people should have more resources and help, but at the same time, it's not right to just take money from people. Now, obviously, these people shouldn't have got it via corruption or anything, mind you, but assume somebody got all their money literally from just hard work and ingenuity. Well, you shouldn't have the right to just steal that from them. So while I want to help people, I don't think it's right to steal from people or to penalize them for being successful. So I would stay neutral on this, but I do think it's important to try to encourage philanthropy on this. Yes, we already have a slightly increased taxes for higher wage earners. People that make a lot more money, you pay a higher interest. Like, okay, so say somebody makes a lot more money, they pay a higher tax bracket. And some of the money from taxes goes to helping with welfare and the people that are less fortunate. So that's technically doing what we're doing here. I just don't think it'd be right to unfairly take money from people. Like, I don't think it's right to steal. Overall, the minimum wage does more harm than good. Disagree. I think a minimum wage is absolutely necessary. Now, it has to be balanced. Obviously, if your country or state increases the minimum wage too quickly, it can actually destabilize the way minimum wage jobs work, and all of a sudden, a lot of businesses would go under. It causes damage to the economy. And in general, people that would have had a minimum wage job literally don't have a job at all anymore. But on the other hand, if you don't have a minimum wage at all, you have a lot of businesses literally paying people way less to the point that they're not even getting paid anything close to a living wage. And yes, there are lots of places now that even with minimum wage pay people less than a living wage, which is fucked up. But the main point is this: there has to be a balance to it. What that exact balance is, I don't know. All I know is this. I think the existence of a minimum wage is good. It's essentially just this little safety guideline from the government saying, hey, this is the lowest you can pay people. Now, obviously, it's still not quite a living wage, but it's at least the government at least trying to limit any sort of indentured sort of servitude situation. Because eventually people would go into debt and circumstances like that. It's just, heck, there shouldn't be like predatory loans or anything like that going on. There should be limits to interest. And even, yes, a person should pay off loans. At the same time, there should be concerns about the extenuating circumstances of those loans. Like if somebody was pressured or coerced into a loan or put into an unfair situation or was lied to about their expectations. Main point is things should be transparent. They should be honest. They should be fair. But I would think the minimum wage is good. Now, granted, I would say in a lot of places the minimum wage should be a little bit higher than it is. But I would say there's a couple places, like I heard California went up like $20 plus. Then again, California is super expensive. So in terms of rent and everything. The problem is raising a minimum wage way too quickly can cause problems. But I'll say this. One, it is absolutely necessary for the existence of a minimum wage. We need a minimum wage. And I would say in most situations, the minimum wage, both in federal and state levels, should be higher than what it is. But also, I think if you increase a minimum wage too fast or too quickly, it can cause problems. So, I'm saying minimum wage is good, but should be a little bit higher. But with anything with the economy, you should be at least aware of what you're doing before you do it. Overall, labor unions do more harm than good. No, I think it's better. I think it's important to fight for people's, get better quality of working conditions. Marijuana should be illegal. Marijuana should be legal. Agree. Like, I don't smoke weed. I've never smoked anything in my life, but I don't consider marijuana dangerous. Now, I do think things like crack and cocaine should be illegal, and meth is illegal, or like fentanyl. I think fentanyl should be illegal. Though I would say when it comes to things like fentanyl, it should be illegal, but there should be more of a focus on drug rehabilitation than punishing the crime. But it should still be illegal. That way you can more strongly limit, its exposure to people. If an immigrant wants to fly the flag of his home country on my country's soil, that's okay with me. Now, you can still love your country, but if you move to my country, you should love America. So I'll say this. The only way you can still say you love, like if I were to go to Japan, if I were to fly an American flag, I better be flying a Japanese flag too. Especially if I'm planning to be a Japanese citizen and live there. Like, here's the thing. Yes, I can still love America. But if I'm going to live in Japan permanently as a citizen and try to integrate into Japanese society, then I should respect the culture and nation of Japan. I mean, it'd be very rude otherwise. A strong military is better foreign policy than a strong diplomacy. I think the idea is peace through strength. I would say this. Strong diplomacy is very important. Okay, we'll go here. I still think strong diplomacy is extremely important. But I'll say this. You can't be in a position to have diplomacy if you don't have a military. No one will bother fucking listening to you. But you also shouldn't be like, violence shouldn't be your first choice, and you should always want to avoid war. But it should always be an option if you have to. Otherwise, you have nothing to negotiate with. So, I think diplomacy is extraordinarily important, but I think it is necessary to have a strong military as a foundation for the diplomacy to stand upon. I feel that without a strong military, you can't have diplomacy. But at the same time, you shouldn't be like some super strong military that just does whatever the fuck it wants and doesn't care for diplomacy at all. Rather, you should have a strong military that is used solely as a foundation to build your diplomacy off of. The idea being world peace and getting along with everyone. But at the same time, if you don't have a strong military, then why should anyone respect or care what you have to say? And even then, if they don't agree with you, what can you fucking do about it? You can't even defend yourself or be of any help to anyone. So why would anyone even listen to anything you have to say? Monarchy and aristocracy titles should be abolished. Agree. I don't agree with the idea of anyone being a king or having special status, power, privileges. The government should provide health care to its citizens free of charge. Moderate agree. Like, I don't think they should pay for literally everything. I should think there should be some oversights. But at the same time, I think there should be ways to make sure that, citizens aren't being price gouged. But at the same time, there should be, citizens should be able to get medical insurance via their employers. They should be able to actually pay for things a bit themselves. But, things shouldn't be too expensive, and healthcare should be available. I know some countries that do universal healthcare sometimes have very poor quality, or you have to do, waiting for an extreme amount of time for even something serious. So it varies from country to country. But a lot of times, if you have universal healthcare, you get lower quality of healthcare. But again, there are some universal healthcare places that you get really great healthcare. I know a lot of times there would be people from the same nation who might have either extreme opinion. It really depends on their own personal experiences. In general, I think people should have access to affordable healthcare, but it shouldn't necessarily be free. It's kind of like the idea of food. Like, there shouldn't be food just given for free to all the citizens. But there should never be a situation where food is unaffordable for citizens either. So, but I do think that there should be some amount of general help for citizens in terms of healthcare. And I do think there should be regulations on healthcare to make sure that the doctors are actually certified and are actually know what they're doing and aren't doing anything unethical. And I think I feel like there was something else I was going to say and I can't really remember. My short-term memory is bad. Would help if I didn't have all this distraction of the fucking advertisements non-stop. I could cover my hand. Maybe I can remember what I was thinking. It is so hard. I'm going to try to just keep my eyes closed so I can try to remember without the constant distraction of the advertisement. But I'm going to turn over here and just look at the wall. But I would say we should never be in a situation where healthcare is unaffordable or unavailable. Also, we should never have a situation where people would be denied healthcare for something serious. Like, for example, say hypothetically you have a medical condition that is going to kill you. But we have access to medical care that if someone does a surgery, it'll save your life. And there's not like any limited resource. It's not like it's a heart transplant or something. Like, let's say they need to like repair a valve in your heart or something, and they have the resources they need for it. Well, but you have no access to money or medical insurance. Well, I think they should still do it anyway. So I think that situation, the people should still get, the medical treatment because they needed to live. So the main thing I'm trying to say is this. I don't think medicine should be unaffordable or unavailable. And I think if someone can't afford it, if it's important for their ability to live or even quality of life, like if it can restore your ability to see, you should still get that. Even if you can't afford it. In the same regard, like say if you get a surgery and you get like a liver transplant, but all of a sudden you weren't able to pay for the surgery, they shouldn't like repossess your liver or send you to or garnish your wages because you couldn't pay your hospital bill, or send you to prison for not able to pay a hospital debt. Obviously all that's fucked up. So there should be laws to prevent any sort of, punishment for people for just getting medical care. But at the same time, I don't think it should be paid across the board. And I think there should be some amount of oversight. But I think also it should be a general consensus that the government should want better health for its citizens. So it should try to facilitate helping its citizens receive the health care they need. Okay. Okay, so I am here. Okay, so the closest to me is Bill Clinton, but he's down here and further left. Can I have So technically I'm left communitarianism, social democracy, individuals required to seek promote communal solutions to both social and economic problems, tend to see themselves as supporting a mode of government that curbs the excesses of capitalism, diminishes inequality by virtue of a mixed economy and universal welfare state, seek to encourage collective solutions, economic redistribution, shared values throughout society by means of participatory democracy in the state. Okay, the problem is there's nobody really in my, like, wait, can I click this and get someone famous that I can compare to? Because, like, the closest to me on this chart is, like, Bill Clinton. And he's, like, here. Oh, I dragged it. So, Bill Clinton's here, and I'm, like, slightly more right and up. And even then, I feel like that probably wasn't a very accurate test, just because I feel a lot of the questions are just, it's, you answer slightly different on any of them, and it really adjusts you somewhere else. So, but for the most part, I'm like really close to the very center of this graph. I don't know. It'd be cool to have like granted, it probably wouldn't all fit on this without being illegible. But imagine if you had a list of every single president in the history of the country. Anyway, how is it an hour and 41 minutes? How did it take me nearly 2 hours to do this? It was only 36 questions. I didn't go on that much of a tangent, did I? Okay, well, that's the end of the video. Later.